Hello, my creative friends, and welcome to another episode of The Daily Prompt. This episode comes after I've been looking through a bunch of the feedback from the now defunct 10-day free store. I had a lot of people saying the same basic thing, and it occurred to me that this really is the most dangerous myth in screenwriting, frankly, in any creative pursuit whatsoever. And the dangerous myth is this idea that I already know this. Here's the problem. If you say, I already know this, you're necessarily looking at it through whatever decisions or analyses or ideas or takeaways you came to previously. But if you're not where you're trying to go, if you're not getting further in your quest, if you're not developing, then what you know is necessarily incomplete. So if what you know is incomplete, you need to relearn it. You need to relearn it in perhaps a wider context. One of the great challenges that I have with fast screenplay is that the beginning of the process is familiar to anyone who's been writing for any length of time. So when you start the process, I already know this comes to mind to a lot of people, but what you don't necessarily know is how this fits into the larger context, how this detail, this piece of information, this idea, this insight, this principle of screenwriting, for example, that you already know, how this fits into the larger path, the larger plan. Most screenwriting education, in my experience, I've discovered that it's been taught from a very technique-based point of view. Very often what happens is people take a look at the movies that have been successful, they break them down and analyze them, figure out structurally what's happening, figure out what's happening within the characters, figure out what scene dynamics are occurring to make those things happen within the characters, to create the experience, the journey, the emotional effect that the character has to deliver to the audience, whatever feeling or message or idea or epiphany or whatever it might be that the writers want for the audience to have. The problem is when you're pulling things apart and you're analyzing just a component, what you're not doing is understanding that component within its larger context of how you use that component. So things get very often detached. How often have you seen screenwriting courses that are just all about the dialogue? Well, that's okay, and there can be lots of great techniques within that, but it's always going to be incomplete because dialogue does not exist independently of character or character arc or plot or subplot, or world building, or subtext, or any of a number of other things. All of the dynamics, all of the elements, all of the interactions and interplay of every aspect of storytelling and creativity and screenwriting. And so because of this, you may know that dialogue technique, or you may know how to do dialogue, but does that mean that your dialogue is connected to all the other elements within your story? Here's the problem. Have you ever read a script? I know I have. Have you read a script where you go, this is some great dialogue, but this story is terrible? Or this is a really interesting scene. It's too bad these characters are so boring. It's because the elements might be well developed. The elements might be well focused, but the connection between them is missing. Maybe the writer doesn't know the connection between them. Maybe the writer only has this handful of techniques. If you only do technique-based learning, where you do a dialogue class, or you do a subtext class, or you do a scene-building class, or you do a structure class, if you focus on those things independently of each other, it's like studying the parts of a car and then assuming that you're going to be able to be a mechanic. You really need to understand how the overall design works. You need to be able to understand how all the pieces fit together. You need to understand the order in which you would assemble things in order to make the most use of your time when focusing on any of those individual elements. The great problem that we have is that when you say, I already know that, when you think to yourself, I've already heard this before, when you reject an idea or you push back on something because you're beyond that, ask yourself, is there some aspect of this that I might be missing out on? Is there some aspect of this that I could learn more from? The real secret to getting to success, the real way to achieve whatever goal you've set for yourself is to always approach it with a certain degree of humility. I don't know everything. I can't know everything. It is impossible for you or me or any writer or teacher or guru or anyone anywhere to know everything, simply because I could discover something new tomorrow that person doesn't know. You could discover something tomorrow that I don't know. So for me to say I already know everything is the height of hubris. And if you already know everything and you're not achieving that goal that you've set out for yourself, well, then clearly there's some aspect of what you think you know that you don't fully know. One of the great challenges that I have is that so many writers come to me or come to discover what I've built here in the fast screenplay stuff, and they look at it and they think, it's too basic, it's too simple. Why would I devote a year to going through this process? But yet they're willing to spend 3 years or 5 years or 20 years in pursuit of this journey through that technique-based approach, that thing that doesn't interconnect everything, that thing that doesn't weave it all together. The great frustration for me is that the very people for whom I have created what I have spent 20 years now building are the very people who think they don't need it. And it's that frustration. It's that misunderstanding. It's that assumption that you know more than you know that is the most dangerous myth in all of screenwriting and all of creativity. And by the way, this doesn't just apply to screenwriting. This applies to any creative venture you can think of. This applies to politics and economics and religion and how the world works. When we assume that we know it, when we assume that there is nothing more to learn on the things that we, fair enough, may have studied for years, if we assume that we know that thing and we assume there is nothing more to learn, we will forever be where we are right now. Because we have to learn the new thing to be able to incorporate it into our process, into our journey, into our creativity. What I built, for example, is a process. What I built is a journey. It's not the detail. The detail fits into the journey. The detail fits into the process. If you don't understand the process, it's a little bit like missing a layer. The analogy that I came up with the other day, and I was going to make a separate video about this, but I'll go ahead and put it in this video here, is if you imagine, think of your favorite color right now. What is your favorite color? Let's say it's blue. And you imagine that I just love blue. It makes me feel good, right? If you imagine there is a world with no blue whatsoever, you could grow up in that world. You could enjoy that world. You could see the beauty of all the hues and the tones that make up the purples and the yellows or whatever colors you're going to see without blue. For the sunsets might be gorgeous and beautiful, and the architecture might be fantastic. And you might think, I see all this world. I understand all this. It's there. But then I say, hey, but there's this other color that you don't know about. Let me show it to you. And I put that layer of blue over it. And suddenly everything pops. That's a little like what I did, what I built with the process-based approach. The process is like this additional layer. It's like this new color. So if people look at what I've built and say, I already know this about characters. I already know this about story dynamic. I already know this about dialogue. I already know this about subtext. I already know this about villains and opposition and theme and all the other stuff that goes in it. That doesn't necessarily mean you understand that new layer that I'm trying to present. And if you miss that new layer, can you go out and do it? Of course you can. It might take you longer. You might be focused, in my opinion, in the hard way of doing it. But anyone can get there however they want to get there. But the true power of a creative person is in being able to recognize what's going on in their world, being able to recognize the insights, the meaning that the story of life is presenting them. So if you can't recognize that you don't necessarily already know it, then you're forever shutting off your capacity as a writer. I'm a huge believer that we all need to move forward as if we don't know it all. Because if we move forward as if we don't know it all, we're always open to new insights. We're always open to new perspectives. And here's the kicker. If you are open to new ideas and new perspectives, you're going to hear something you already know for the 20th time. And for some reason, on that 20th time, or 10th, or 15th, or 120th, for some reason, that one time you hear it, it's like a light bulb goes off over your head. It's like you see it at a deeper layer. You see its interconnectedness with everything else. It flashes ideas and creativity and sparks of imagination into your mind immediately. You already knew it, but somehow being open to learning more about it is the very thing you were missing. And suddenly, you see the blue all around you. I wish there was a way to convey to you that there's much more here than anyone has ever seen before. Even me. I don't see it all. I don't know it all. I've developed this new layer so that you can see a whole broad swath of the thing. But that's not the end of it. As people learn that, as people develop separately and independently, they're going to discover and come across new ideas and insights and perspectives and awareness and discoveries that I haven't had, that I couldn't possibly have, that's unique to their journey. I need to be open to taking on board what they teach. I need to be open to taking on board their tools and techniques. What I've built is a framework that can collect all those tools and techniques so we can literally apply it all. And we can apply it all quickly, effectively, fluidly. So, bringing it back to the point. The most dangerous myth in all of screenwriting, in all of creativity, in all of storytelling, in all of any human endeavor that involves the human imagination, by the way. The myth, the biggest danger is assuming that you already know it when it's impossible to fully know all of it. It's just impossible. So today's daily prompt is relatively simple. Open your mind. Open your mind to the things you think you already know. Open your mind to the things that you know you already know. If you've spent a 3-year university program, if you've spent 3 years in developing a screenwriting degree and you've gone way down the rabbit hole in all this detail, to assume that you can't learn any more about that thing is literally the thing that will kill your chances. If not by killing your career itself, then certainly by dulling your creative tool inside. What we have and what we are is the cumulative effect of our experience in life, of our journey, of what we've learned, of what we've experienced, what we've imagined. All of these things coming together into our point of view. That point of view is always going to be limited by our own perspective, by our own worldview, by our own experience. So we always have to be open to what other people present to us. So for this, I say, today's daily prompt, take a look at what you think you already know and see if you can look at it in a whole new light. Relearn something you already know. Relearn more about the thing that you think you know already. Reread something that taught you the thing you know in the first place. You're a different person today than you were when you initially discovered it. Reread it, rediscover it, go further, go deeper, because that's how we're going to get where we're trying to go. If you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to ask them in the comments below. Send me a comment, click the subscribe button, do all the social media stuff. If you're interested in joining me on this extraordinary journey that I spent 20 years building, join me in Fast Screenplay. If you want to know a little bit more about it, first, sign up for the seven steps to writing and selling your screenplay webinar. But whatever you do, however you go about getting there, take action today. It's the only way, and it's the way you absolutely must do. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.